what's going on there, YouTube? It's SEASOCROSSFIRESURVIVORS representing JVS, so I'm back here again for another first reaction TV review for Supergirl, second season. I think this is episode 5. The name of the episode is Crossfire. This is actually a pretty interestingly good episode, surprisingly, because I knew, looking at the preview from last week, that this was kind of be like James Olsen kind of getting out of his shell, feeling powerless. You know, and I think that they did a good job representing Jimmy in this one. I mean, his dad's camera got smashed, you know, him and Supergirl got attacked right in front of everything, and he really feels like helpless. Like everybody's going and doing something to really help, and he feels as though he's always just been this standalone sidekick. And the thing about the critique that I have for the show is I've never seen Superman and Jimmy in the same space. Like I mean, that's supposed to be his boy. He never calls Clark. He never. I mean, I understand, you know, initially the first season, but after that, I mean, I felt like they could have had some interesting conversations and dialogue. Like, if anybody would be really kind of motivating him, they would be Superman, but they never do that. So I thought it was really weird. But as far as with this episode, like, James got some skill sets. He's got a black belt. He got into some hairy Crossfire action sequences. There was one sequence where the first fight he got in, he got hit. We got hit in this side of the face and he was bleeding, and then when he got kicked, you saw the blood again, and I was like, I think it might have been like a makeup mistake. But the fight choreography was on point. And the thing about this episode is, like, it identifies with me that the visual effects for Supergirl is better. I don't understand it because CBS had a bigger budget for Supergirl, but yet everything as far as the action, the set, the CG, it all looks better on CW in my person. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below what y'all think about that. But there's a couple aerial situations where Supergirl is trying to avert the weapons that these guys that came from Cadmus had. And I was like, this is dope. Like, they really were utilizing speed very well. Whereas the beginning of the first season, they never really utilized her speed as good as they could have. Or at least visually is concerned. There was even another point where, like at the party, where Supergirl was kind of like using her her heat vision in kind of like an aerial kind of sense, and I was like, that is so sweet. I think that one moment where the guy got pushed into space by the gravity gun, which I'll call it, and like the car started to like freeze and the guy started to choke, I was like, this is pretty sickly. Sometimes I find the show weird, only because there are moments where it just doesn't make sense. Like, there was a moment where, you know, Supergirl knows this guy's like freezing to death, and she's kind of going slow down versus like trying to get him down to earth a little bit quicker so he can be able to, you know, warm up. Or like when Jimmy was going up against these guys and he knew he didn't have any backup, he could have at least told Supergirl what he was kind of doing, or at least consulting with her. But I mean, I guess I can understand where he's trying to go with it. I think it's just certain moments where it's kind of like cliche to be cliche, like there has to be an opposition. I think one time when Supergirl was fighting against the guys and she was able to, you know, fend off the guy, but before the guy used the gravity gun, she had the guy's gun. I was like, she could have just took it with her or destroyed it, you know. But she never, anytime she actually had them in her hands, she never actually destroyed it. Which I think that's some of the thing with just these kind of series in general. You just have to kind of get over that. And embrace the different things that are actually really good in it, such as the dialogue, such as the interactions. I think interesting to see like Kara and Lex, or not Lex, but Lex's sister. But her and Mon-El were hilarious. I think Mon-El, like him being the fish out of water, I think that was really good, really key for Kara to get that revelation of understanding of her kind of like doing what her sister did with her. And even Mon-El is just a totally different breed, man. Like, he's a jerk. I think it's weird though, because I think about him as Kai from the Vampire Diaries. So I'm like, every time he smiles, I'm thinking in my head he's got some kind of agenda. Like, I don't trust him. And it's really weird. It plays into the things that Kara does. I'm like, she's justified, because I don't know, why is he smiling about this? Like, he's got something up his sleeve, and it's really strange. But I really love Chris Wood's performance. He actually brings something interesting. He brings a different form of light to this show. The other thing I thought about was Maxwell Lord is gone. His character, the actor, is just gone. I mean, I know Cat Graham is gone, but I think that has something to do with the money thing. But But I don't know, his presence just being gone is just really strange, because the thing about Maxwell Lord, he had this relationship and connection with Supergirl. And the thing about now versus the first season, Supergirl had Jimmy, and she was pining over. She thought about Cat Graham had this relationship with Maxwell Lord. Just the problem was he was, identified as a sociopath. Like, he was sick, And now, like, both of those relationships are severed. Like, there is no anybody in Kara's life really relationally other than Mon-El. And then now she's more gravitated towards interaction with Lex's sister. And then the other side of that is with, Carol Danvers. It's really interesting to actually see what Alex is doing, because Alex now, she obviously has this huge crush on Sawyer. I think her name is Sawyer. Correct me if I'm wrong. But you could tell, like, in the past, Maggie. The past few episodes, you could really tell she loves spending time with her. She loves communicating with her. But this was the first time it was kind of confronted. And I kind of could tell it was coming. What I'll say about this is on an unbiased outward opinion. When I look at Gotham and I see what's going on with Penguin Enigma, it's rushed, it's jaded, it's just there for filler, and it's not done very well. As far as the sexual preference orientation of relationship between Edward and Enigma, it just does not do anything for the show. With Maggie and with Alex, I understand them being cops, I understand them relating. At first in this episode, I was like, man, this is going to get really cliche. I've seen this before in the beginning, earlier tonight with the episode I saw of Gotham. But when it came down to it, when I saw Alex really start to express to Kara, like, her confliction about her sexuality, and then when she was confronted by Maggie in general, like, Maggie was like, you like me? Like, is this a thing? Maybe I read this wrong. And I was like, dang. Like, they've never really dealt with that on mainstream, let alone on, like, a superhero show. So I think that the professionalism of how they actually did the sexual orientation between Alex and Maggie, and Alex not just kind of diving full in and trying to understand, like, this likability she's having relatable with Maggie, but really trying to take a step back and identifying, there's some kind of thing here, and I thought that was actually really interesting, because I normally TV just doesn't get that right, or if I've seen it in real life, what I'm saying, it would maybe kind of play out like that, versus somebody just like, oh yeah, I'm this, or oh yeah, I'm that. So I wanted to touch on that because I thought that they handled it so much better than Gotham was. That's the reason why I really wanted to bring it out. Preferentially wise, I don't have any really, nudge one way or another personally at all, but I think the way that they actually did handle it for Alex as a character, it's not just a kind of cookie cutter way of actually doing it. Like, it's something that's going to have to be kind of a progressional thing, and it might not end up the way that she even thinks, because something could happen to Maggie, and that might be a whole nother surface thing that will add another layer to Alex as a character. But in general, Kara is really starting to understand the dimensions of relationship and family that she's kind of never had before with Mon-El, and I thought that was done very well. And like I said, the visual effects for the show is really good. I think that this one was not as good as some of the other episodes, but to see where Jimmy's coming from, to know that he feels helpless, he wants to do what his dad did, Wynn is helping him understand what is at stake, I think it's going to be really interesting to see him become the Guardian. Long story short, I don't know when, but that's funny. I don't know when, but it's going to be interesting to see how they actually play it out. Considering him, like, having his hand-to-hand combat with the bat and then using the shield, I was like, this is going to be pretty interesting. So either way, I give this episode an 8 out of 10. I was thinking about an 8.5 out of 10, but there were moments where I was like, the villains, they suck at acting, like, bad. Like, it was only one villain that opened his mouth, but then when he talks, it just, no, gosh, they just bad. So I think that they were the thing that kind of brought the episode down to an 8 for me. But again, the episode was pretty interesting, and I thought that they did a good job establishing certain dynamics with characters. But hopefully you enjoyed this first reaction review for Supergirl. This is Crossfire. Keep it locked. JVS, we ain't gonna stop. Y'all have a blessed one. Peace.